Hello, once again, my name is Kevin Ellis, local president of 2338 in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And we're going to talk to you tonight about two articles, Article 47, midterm bargaining, and Article 49, which is union rights and responsibilities. But what we're going to talk about today has to do with the agency's requirement to actually have to bargain. Okay? Now, under federal statute 5 U.S.C. 7117, there's a duty to bargain in good faith, a compelling need, and a duty to consult. What that simply means is that the agency and the union are required to bargain when one side or the other initiates bargaining. And we're going to talk about bargaining, the need to bargain, and what happens if one party or the other decides they're not going to play fair and they're not going to bargain. Okay? Now, this is Master Agreement 2011. It's a green book. However, we have just signed a new contract with the VA a couple of months ago on August the 8th of 2023. It's going to be red or burgundy. But for the purpose of what we're going to talk about today, the Article 47 and Article 49 from the Green Book to the new book have not changed. They remained identical. So what I'm going to talk about with you in the new contract of 2023 is the exact same language in the old contract of 2011. Okay? All right. So, the federal government, unlike the private sector, unlike the private sector, we cannot strike. We cannot strike to require management or require the agency to get to the negotiation table over conditions of employment. Right now, we are witnessing in Michigan, UAW, on a strike because of their working conditions. That includes pay, benefits, and the actual workplace itself is the reason why they're bargaining or negotiating with the agency. In the federal government, we don't get to strike, and to compel the agency to come to the table, sometimes we have to file what's called an unfair labor practice. You can find an unfair labor practice in 5 U.S.C. 7116. Okay? That's the unfair labor practice statute if the agency or the union refuses to bargain or follow federal law as it pertains to conditions of employment of federal employees. Now, our Article 47 is pretty simple and pretty straightforward. It says the purpose of the article is to establish a complete and an orderly process to govern mid-term negotiations where at all levels. That means, and first of all, midterm. What is midterm bargaining? Midterm bargaining is any bargaining that would have taken place between the old contract and the negotiation of a new one. So when we had the old contract in 2011, the Green Book, until we had a new contract, which is the burgundy one, which is being printed now, everything that happened in between those two, bargaining, at the local level or mid-range level, is called mid-term bargaining. Because bargaining was happening in the middle of that term agreement and the next term agreement. That means it is mid-term bargaining. Okay? So, the article governs mid-term bargaining. The contract says in Section 2, in Section 1, General, Paragraph C, as appropriate, the union may initiate mid-term bargaining at all levels on matters affecting the working conditions of bargaining unit employees. Now, listen to that very carefully. The union may initiate. That simply means the union can initiate bargaining at any time. It does not have to reflect a change from the agency. Okay? You have change bargaining, which is where the agency says, hey, we have 15 employees that are on tours of duty of 8 to 4, 30. We want to change them tours of duties to go from 9 o'clock to 5:30. And they have to send the union a notice of opportunity or a notice of change in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement that says we want to change the tours of duty, or if they want to change a position description, or if they want to change some part of negotiations. It could be parking. Parking is a condition of employment. Road signs within the parking lot is a condition of employment. Striping of lines is a condition of employment. Stop signs is a condition of employment. Light is a condition of employment. Wall color is a condition of employment. Chair size, chair shape, desk height, desk type are all conditions of employment. So everything that happens with employees from entering the parking lot to exiting the parking lot is a condition of employment. Okay? The thermostat, the temperature of the room, is a condition of employment. All right? Safety is a condition of employment. So when the agency says we want to change anything within a condition of employment, that is known as change bargaining. Okay? They are required to notify the union. The union is required, or should, ask for a briefing about why you want to make the change. The agency has to explain to you why they want to make the change. In addition to explaining to you why they want to make the change, they are required to provide with you every bit of data and information in which they rely upon to want to propose a change. A change does not become effective until the union has agreed to the change proposed by the agency. Okay? So never think because the agency says they're proposing to do something that the union don't have rights. The union has rights and the employees have rights. Okay? And Article 1 of the Master Agreement says plainly the union is responsible for acting on or on behalf of all of the bargaining unit, period. Okay? So the union has that responsibility and that burden. So when the agency initiates a change, regardless of what it is, the union has an obligation to be informed, be engaged, and bargain where necessary and appropriate. Okay? Now, the other type of bargaining is midterm. The union, the agency has, the union goes to the agency and says, hey, we noticed that we need to have additional thermostats placed into the building because the temperature is not being adequately moderated in each of the rooms. That would be a union-initiated midterm bargaining change. We go to the agency and say, hey, agency, we want to bargain over thermostats and their locations because the conditions of employees are impacted. Some of them are saying they're too hot. Some are saying they're too cold. The thermostat that controls these 5 rooms are all in one central location down the hallway. These individual rooms need to be able to control their own temperature. And by doing so, the union can initiate a midterm bargaining. You send the agency a demand to bargain, develop some initial proposals, and send to them. They are required by law to respond to that and to meet you at the bargaining table over proposals that are negotiable. Okay? It is a requirement. All right? Now, Section 4 of Article 47 and Article 49 are almost identical, and that's important. Here we're in Article 47. We get to Article 49 in just a moment. Article 47 says for local bargaining, local issues, on all policies and directives and other changes for which the department meets its bargaining obligation at the national level, okay, appropriate local bargaining shall take place at individual facilities and may include substantive bargaining that does not conflict with negotiated national policy and agreements. So what that means is this. We're having a conversation right now with the department that is informing us that performance standards have changed at the national level. No, a program has changed at the national level, and it is called WebVir, WEBVIRR. It has something to do with the type of program that coders utilize. Okay, we were told today that the agency implemented that program somewhere in the VA, and we were told it was a national implementation. The supervisor wasn't quite sure when it was implemented, who said it was implemented. She don't have any data on it just yet, but she's going to find it for us. The point that I'm trying to make to you is, just because that was implemented nationally somewhere, the local agency still has an obligation to notify the local union of the change at their facility. Here's the reason why. Performance standards are negotiated. What happens in New York City may not be the same thing that happens in Tupelo, Mississippi. The working conditions in New York City may be different than the working conditions in Tupelo, Mississippi. Therefore, just because you have a national directive or a national handbook does not preclude bargaining at the local level. Unions do not allow any agency to tell you you don't have to bargain, they don't have to bargain anything because it was implemented by national. VA directives and VA handbooks are inferior to the master agreement, or they are subservient to the master agreement, which means the master agreement supersedes a directive and a handbook. A directive and a handbook is nothing no more than HR or VA's guidance on how to do something or direction on how to do something. But that direction does not always have to apply across the board in the exact same manner at all 150 VAs across the nation. There may be some differences, okay? So we have to keep that in mind, all right? Now, here's the most important part. When a change has been proposed in dealing with midterm bargaining, okay, upon request, the union will be briefed. The agency does not have an option to say, we're not going to brief you, here's the paper, we're telling you what we're going to do, we're going to implement. No. Once they give you the notice of proposed change, and at this point it is a proposed change, not a change, they are required to give you a briefing on it. What's a briefing? A briefing means they have to explain to you what they want to do, why they want to do it, how they want to do it, what impacted those decisions and why they want to do it, any empirical data they relied upon, any stats they relied upon, any language they relied upon, all has to be briefed and provided to the union. The union has to have the exact same information that the agency utilized to propose their change. Why? Because the agency may be interpreting it one way and the union could be interpreting it a different way. Therefore, both individuals, the agency and the union, are both operating off the exact same language and exact same documents. And it's very possible, often more than likely, that you're going to have two different interpretations of the same language. Okay? However, this language is not negotiable and you cannot misinterpret it. It says, upon request, the union will be briefed on the proposed change prior to the demand to bargain. Now, the reason why you want to be briefed after getting the information is to understand the what, when, how, when, and where. All the information you want to know, you want to figure it out, hear it from the agency, and then you go back and issue your demand to bargain and develop your initial proposals and send to the agency. Just because they give you a piece of paper that tells you what they want to do and why they want to do it does not explain all the intimate details that you need to know about why, what, when, where, and who. Okay? That's the purpose of the briefing. Once you receive the briefing, then you go back, develop your initial proposals, develop your demand to bargain, send it to the agency. Now you come to the table. The agency gave you what they wanted to do in a notice of opportunity or notice of change. Then you get the information, you receive your briefing, then you provide the agency with your proposals, union, to what they are proposing. Now both sides enter into negotiations at the bargaining table. Okay? That essentially covers Article 47, midterm bargaining. Okay? Now, it says proposed changes in personnel policies, practices, or working conditions affecting the interests of one local union shall require notice to who? The president of that local. So, I don't care if it's a policy, I don't care if it's a SOP, I don't care if they call it a DOP, or we don't care what they call it. If it impacts or affects a condition of employment in any kind of way, it requires notice to the union and it is bargainable. It also says practices. If the agency and union has been engaged in a practice that has been long-standing, let's say, for example, the agency and union has had 155 parking spots on the parking lot. And the first 5 parking lots by the front door on the right side of the building has belonged to the 5 highest agency members. The 5 parking spots on the left side of the door has belonged to the union to have as parking spots. Both sides have accepted that practice of agency park on this side, the first 5. Union parks on this side, the first 5. They've accepted that as part of the practice for the past 10, 12 years. That is an established practice that both sides have agreed to, has been long-standing, there's been no issue, there has been challenged. That's a practice. If one side wants to change it, they have to provide notification to the other party that we want to change. The union might say, hey, agency, the practice has been 5 parking spots on the left for the union, 5 parking spots on the right for the agency. We now want 7 parking spots because we have new officers now. we have to send notice to the agency that we are proposing to add 2 more parking spots and the reason why we want to do it. Okay? We have to provide notice to the agency, give them a chance to respond back before the parties come to the table. There is a requirement to still bargain it, even though both sides understand it's a change. If they agree to the change without bargaining, roll on. If one side says no, you want to add 2 more park spots, it's going to take away 2 more. It's going to take away park spots from motorcycle parking that we were going to implement here in the next few months. So we need to bargain about where we're going to put the motorcycle parking. Now you have to get into negotiations, bargaining over what, when, where, and how, and where your parking spots are going to be. That was a change that requires bargaining and notification. Now, the contract also says, upon request, the parties will negotiate as appropriate. The union representatives shall, not may, shall receive official time for all time spent in negotiations as provided under 5 U.S.C. 7131. Now, that may be different from one facility to the next facility. Our facility operates on official time that does not count against the bank of hours, or duty time, or table time. This official time at the table spent in negotiations is just that. It is duty time or official time not counted against the bank of hours. And we can agree to how much time there's going to be. If the parties have agreed to be at the table for 3 days in negotiations, 8 hours a day, that 8 hours a day for them days agreed to in bargaining does not count against the union's official time bank of hours that comes from the contract. That comes from 7131A. Okay? That is table time. Okay? So understand the difference. The time you're given in the contract through the formula of 4.25 is not the same time you spent at the negotiation table. Okay? That's important for you to understand and know. Now, ground rules for local bargaining shall be established by parties at the local level. Our local has a set of LSA ground rules and a set of midterm ground rules. Those ground rules say that time spent in preparation, developing the proposals, developing the demand to bargain, research, drafting of proposals, all of that is also considered official time, table time, that does not come from the bank of hours. Okay? So here's what I mean by that. We send the agency a demand to bargain. We tell them we're going to develop proposals, and we're going to need Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of next week from 12 to 4 p.m. to develop our initial proposal to send to the agency on a proposed change or a union-initiated change. The proposal time, because we have ground rules that say preparation time does not count against the bank of hours, that time comes from 7131A, table time, okay? It's important for you to have ground rules, midterm ground rules, or LSA ground rules that are general ground rules. Ground rules do not dictate every specific bargaining issue, okay? Because bargaining over parking may take 40 hours. It may take 20 hours of proposal development. Bargaining over a telework agreement may take 4 hours of prep time, and it may only take 8 hours of bargaining. So your ground rules is nothing but an umbrella that says in the development of proposals, demand to bargains, we need the time to be agreed to that does not come out of our bank of hours. That's why ground rules are important, okay? For LSA and for midterm bargaining. The contract even tells you ground rules for local bargaining, what? Shall be established by the parties at the local level. So it requires you to have ground rules at the local level. Okay? That's Article 47. Now, let's go to Article 49. Don't pay attention to the language up there. That should be rights and responsibilities, as it says over here. That's a copy and paste error. But here's what's important about Article 49. Article 49 says the parties recognize that a new relationship between the union and the department as what? Full partners is essential for the performing or reforming of the department into an organization that works more efficiently and effectively and better serves the customers' needs, employees, union representatives, and the department. So Article 49, when it deals with rights and responsibilities, it is taking into account the customer, the veterans, the employees' needs, the stakeholders, the union representatives, the union's right to speak for and negotiate on behalf of the bargaining unit, and the department needs. Okay? All four interests are taken into account. The customer needs, how to best serve the veteran, the patients. The employee needs, how to best satisfy them and meet their needs. The union, how to meet the needs of bargaining that not only protects this small group, but the remainder of the bargaining unit as well, so that we all are treated fair and equal. And also the department needs. How do we help the department reach their objective and their goals? By ensuring that the union's rights are protected, the stakeholders, the employees' needs are met, so that we can serve the needs of the customers. Okay? Bargaining is really not that hard. It's not that difficult, but it is what has been intended and enshrined into law and into the master agreement. Bargaining is a necessary part of the work function in the federal workplace. If an agency tells you, hey, we ain't got time to bargain, we got to run a hospital, or we ain't got time to bargain, we got to run a prison, or we ain't got time to bargain, we got to run an agency. That agency, it either doesn't understand statutory law, or they are not an essential full partner, because bargaining is a requirement in the federal government, period. You have to do it, okay? Now, here's when it begins to get a little bit meaty in Article 49. These are, once again, the rights and responsibilities of the union. Section 2 says the union has the right and responsibility to address all matters related to personnel policies, practices, and other conditions of employment. The parties will have, not may, will have due regard for the obligations imposed by 5 U.S.C. Chapter 71 and this agreement, and the maintenance of a cooperative labor management working relationship. That means that the agency understands that the union's responsibility is to negotiate on behalf of all the personnel and any policy they put into play about those personnel, any practices they put in play about those personnel, and any changes or any condition of employment that is impacted by the agency. Here's the reason why that's important. Agencies cannot just go out here and create a bunch of policies and throw them on a SharePoint site and say, hey, we got policies put in place, they're on the SharePoint site. The agency implemented a policy about 5 years ago that involved nurses' comp time and how they get comp time for traveling. These were registered nurses. The employees and the agency, without the union knowing, the agency had agreed to allow these employees to travel back and forth from one CBOC to the other one, providing patient care. The union did not know this was happening. However, the agency had agreed to it and told employees, yeah, go ahead and go. We don't mind you going. Yeah, go on the weekends, go after duty hours. Yeah, go ahead and go. So the employees did. And the employees kept asking about, hey, I got my overtime for working when I was there. They said, but what about the 3 hours of driving back and forth? Should I get comp time for that? The agency said, no, you don't get no comp time for that. There was overtime. You agreed to it. You just go work the overtime. That's all you get. We caught wind of it. We said, no, they get comp time for travel back and forth. The managers had actually said, you know what, Kevin, you're right. We screwed that up. We owe these nurses comp time, and we need to pay them. It was the associate director who says, we ain't gonna give them nothing. We got a policy. They should have followed the policy. They should have submitted their request within 14 days of them traveling, and we would have paid it. Well, we asked the employees, have you seen that policy they're talking about? Because as a union, we haven't seen it. We have no idea what policy you're talking about. Come to find out, the agency implemented the policy, did not tell nobody, did not tell the union, did not tell the employees, implemented the policy and told the employees, suck it up. You stuck with it. We filed a grievance, took it to arbitration, and the arbitrator said, wait a minute, agency. If you created a policy and you didn't notify the union, you didn't bargain a policy with the union, and the employees did not know the policy was was there in place, how can you hold them accountable? The agency said, well, they have to go find the policy and look for it. And the arbitrator said to one of them, show me what the policy is. The agency said, okay. Yeah, this is how they looked. Like I'm looking at you. The agency didn't even know what a policy was. They had no idea what a policy was. The policy was buried in layers and layers and layers of folders they couldn't even find themselves. And the arbitrator says, no, because you didn't, one, notify the union, give them the opportunity to bargain on behalf of the employees, I'm going to rule in behalf of the employees, and you owe them about 250 to 270 hours of comp time for violating the collective bargaining agreement and not giving the union the opportunity to, one, negotiate and act for on behalf of the employee. And then secondly, the arbitrator said, because the employee was not aware of the policy that you have put in place, you can't hold them accountable to something they were not aware of occurred. So we won that arbitration, and the employees were given about 250 comp time hours for their travel back and forth. That's an example of what happens when you do not notify the union of a policy that's been implemented and give them the opportunity to bargain that policy on behalf of employees. Okay? Now, this is another important section of Article 49. It says the union will be provided reasonable advance notice of, be given the opportunity to be present at and participate in any formal discussion between one and more representatives of the department and one or more employees in the unit of their respective concerning a grievance, policy, personnel, practice, or general condition of employment. Now, I need you to understand this clearly. Article 49 is the rights and responsibilities of the union. When Article 49 and 711482A marry one another and say, hey, the union has to be given the opportunity to be present. That did not say the employee will make a decision of whether the union will be given it, provided a reasonable advance notice. No, it says the union will be given the opportunity to be present. So, that it's incumbent upon the agency to tell the union, hey, we're going to have a conversation with Sally and Jane about a policy, and we want to give you the opportunity to be present. The agency has to give the union the notice of opportunity to be present. Just like they do give us a notice of opportunity to about a change in conditions of employment, they have to give us the right to be present during the conversation about any general condition of employment, and here's the reason why. The agency calls a meeting with Jane and Sally and said to them, hey, we're going to implement a new policy. It's a dress code policy. You can no longer wear high heels above 1 inch, and you can no longer wear dresses to work that hang down beyond your calf muscles. All your dresses have come down below your calf, and your heels can no longer be no more than 1 inch in height. The employees do not realize that is a change in conditions of employment, because the agency said it's a dress code. That dress code is a condition of employment. If the practice has been that women can wear dresses or skirts that come up to their knees, and they can wear 2 to 3 inch heel shoes, the agency cannot come along and make a change and tell them we're going to change that. No more than they can say, hey, Sally and Jane, your tour of duty is 8 to 4:30. We now need you to show up a few minutes early and have your computers turned on and ready to go, so that when 8 o'clock hits, you can see the first patient, or excuse me, you can answer the first phone call, or you can take your first IM or your first note. You cannot do that. That is a change in condition of employment. When an employee hits the start button to turn on their computer, that is part of work. If you're going to require an employee to come in early to turn their computer on, turn the lights on, unlock the doors, that is a change in conditions of employment, and it requires you to be giving an employee comp time or overtime. You cannot make that unilateral change without notifying the union, because we speak for and on behalf of the employees, not the agency. And when the agency does not give you that right to do so, they have violated the contract, and they have violated 5 U.S.C. 7117, which is their duty to bargain. Okay? Now, this is the last section, next to last section we're going to cover here. Section 4 says, notification of changes in conditions of employment. This is mandatory. Mandatory. The department shall provide reasonable advance notice to the appropriate union official or officials prior to changing conditions of employment of bargaining unit employees. Prior to. The agency provides reasonable advance notice prior to. You need to bargain at your local what is reasonable advance notice. Some places it may be 14 days. Some places it might be 30 days. Some places it might be 60 days. You can bargain what is reasonable, because reasonable does not have a definition of time. The agency might consider reasonable to be 2 hours, which we know is a bunch of crap. But they can consider 2 hours to be reasonable. The union might consider 14 days or 30 days to be reasonable. It's what they interpret to be reasonable. Neither side is really wrong. However, you can bargain what is reasonable advance notice. That is bargainable because it is based upon your perception of how much time you need to provide notice and how much time you need to receive notice. Okay? That's bargainable. Now, here's the other part that's very, very critical. The department agrees. There's no if, ands, or buts. The department agrees. Let me flip this, turn it just a hair. I just noticed something there. The department agrees to forward along with the notice, not after the notice, along with the notice, a copy of any and all information and or material relied upon to propose the change or changes in conditions of employment. Let me say that again. When the agency sends you a notification of change, they are required by law and by contract to send you all the information they relied upon to make the proposed change. If they did a survey, they got to send it to you. If they did a stats, if they kept stats on phone records or phone calls or drive time, they've got to give it to you. If they relied upon a directive or a handbook, whatever they relied upon, they have to give you a copy of it. They cannot say to you, oh yes, we're going to propose a change based on VA Handbook 0500. Well, VA Handbook 0500 might be 5,000 pages. So what specific section of VA Handbook 0500 did you specifically rely upon? You can't tell me the whole handbook because you didn't rely upon the whole handbook. And nobody's going to believe you that you relied upon the entire handbook. You have to be specific and open and honest with the union and give them all the information you relied upon to propose the change. If not, it will be considered bad faith bargaining. And you will be required to give that information. Okay? Now, this is important. If you get the briefing and the agency doesn't give you all the information you need, or even if you don't need get a briefing and you want to initiate bargaining, you send the agency an information request. They are required to provide you with the information. The last section says on a proposed change, they have to give it to you at the time of notification. But let's say you're going to initiate bargaining on your own, and you want to know how many employees in the past 5 years have been counted AWOL, has been given an admonishment for 2 hours of AWOL. Send an information request. The agency has to give that to you. If they've got 200 employees and 100 of them, or 50% of them, has had 6 or 8 hours of AWOL apiece, and they've never given any discipline for 2 hours of AWOL to none of them, but they gave it to one person that happened to be a union representative, or one person that happens to be black, or female, or over 40, or an advocate, then they have to provide you with that information. Because it could be that employee is being singled and targeted because of their activity, the color of their skin, their height, their beauty, whatever it can be. They can be a target of the agency. So you do an information request to find out, has everybody else received the same treatment? More than likely, you're going to figure out they have not. Okay? That's important. All right? Now, also we want to know from the agency a consistent penalty of discipline. If one whole entire section has been coming in to work late for a year, 5 to 7 minutes late, no big deal, nobody really cared about it, but one employee comes in 5 minutes late on one occasion, all of a sudden it becomes an issue for the agency. Do an information request. You might find some disparate treatment there, okay? So there are reasons why information requests are necessary, and the agency has to provide them. The contract says that the department agrees to provide to the union when, upon request, with information that is normally maintained, reasonably available, and necessary for the union to effectively fulfill its representational responsibilities. If it's information that the agency normally has, they normally maintain it in the course of business, they have to give it to you. If you need it to represent the employees, the agency has to give it to you. No other ifs, ands, or buts. They have to give it to you. Now, upon request doesn't give you a set time limit. Here's what we know from dealing with the Federal Labor Relations Authority. The agency has 60 days to provide you with the information. If they respond to you and say, hey, we don't have it, you have to respond back and say, no, we know you have it. Here are the reasons why we know that you have the information, because it's normally maintained in a regular course of business, and here's how we know. They have to give it to you within 60 days. That's the maximum. If they don't give it to you within 60 days, it is an unfair labor practice. File your charge. The FLRA will make them give you the information, okay? Because if you have it, agency, and the union needs it, you have to give it to them. Here's what happens if you don't. You go to arbitration, and take my case for example. You go to arbitration. The information you needed to prepare for your grievance and your case, the agency withheld it for 3.5 years, did not give it to the union. The union filed a grievance based on what we thought we do, and based on what we heard, and based on what was going on. The agency tried to come to arbitration and say, the grievance wasn't specific enough, it didn't have any detail, it didn't have this. The arbitrator said, wait a minute, agency. They asked you for the information 2 months ahead of time before they filed a grievance. You never gave them the information they needed. Now you come to arbitration and you lay out all the information that they've been trying to get to prepare for their case, and you have the audacity to say the grievance wasn't specific enough, but you withheld the information from them. The arbitrator said the gravamen of the grievance was enough. You knew the purpose, you knew why they filed the grievance, and you knew the reason why they filed the grievance. But because you also withheld the information, I'm going to give you, and I'm going to give the union an adverse inference because you interfered with their ability to prepare their case, and it was a strike against the agency, okay? So ask them for it in writing, make a follow-up. If they don't provide it to you, move on to arbitration, ask for an adverse inference from the agency, from the arbitrator, which means what you're going to testify to what you believe the information would have said and would have showed will be considered as rock solid testimony. That's why it doesn't pay for agencies to withhold and hide information. We're going to find it out anyway, one way or the other. And you withholding it and hiding it only makes it worse for you as an agency. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you one more thing and I'm going to be done. Oh, wrong one. All right. So here is a document. The union filed. Give me a second. Well, anyway, let me go back here. This is a memorandum of understanding. I'm sorry, I can't get it to roll up like I wanted to. I just don't know what I've done differently here to not make it work. But this is a memorandum of understanding based on 2 unfair labor practice charges. CHCA 22-0293, which was a parking change. The agency sent the union a notice of change of parking, a bunch of things they wanted to do. We asked for a briefing. We got the briefing. We submitted the agency a demand to bargain and initial proposals, and they refused to bargain. We filed an unfair labor practice charge. The union also filed an unfair labor practice charge on another issue similar to parking. We issued a demand to bargain, initial proposals, and the agency refused to bargain. The unfair labor practice charge was going to be levied against the agency. They were going to be found guilty of failing to bargain in good faith, and a bunch of other things were going to be sent out to the employees that demonstrated the agency acted badly. The agency said, hey, here's what we do. If you're willing to bypass a posting being provided so that the whole world knows what happened, we agree to bargaining. And we said, okay, great. However, we will agree to a MOU and without a posting, but you will rescind the policy that you put in place in 2022 and go back to the old policy that was in place in 2018. Or, in other words, we wanted a status quo ante remedy, which means we're going to go all the way back to 2018, and that's the parking policy that we're going to negotiate from over your new projected change. So, part of the reasons why you file unfair labor practice charges, arbitrators can do the same thing. They have the same authority as the FLRA when it comes to an unfair labor practice charge, is they can make the agency do a status quo ante and go back to the way it used to be. That's important because of this. If there was 200 park spots for bargaining unit employees, the agency made a change and got rid of 50 parking spots, guess what? Them 50 parking spots go back to the bargaining unit because we did a status quo ante, which means we go back to the way it was before you implemented your new changes. Okay? That is a status quo ante remedy, and that is a reasonable remedy for agencies that have not bargained as required. They violated the statute of duty to bargain. They did not give the the union the right to bargain on behalf of employees. That is what's supposed to happen. Right now, we are expecting a status quo ante remedy because the agency in 2018 started counting employees AWOL just frivolously, just over anything. AWOL, going to college, AWOL, going to school, AWOL, when it used to be leave without pay or excused absence. It was right after the director got disciplined for 15 days that she went on a tirade and just says, count every employee AWOL that you can. I'm just sick of it. She was pissed. We're asking for a status quo ante to go back to 2018 to rescind all of them AWOLs because the agency refused to bargain over their hours of duty policy, which had an element of AWOL in it. They refused to negotiate over it. Now, federal law says that AWOLs and leave without pays is a condition of employment. And the FLRA has said that if the union requests a demand to bargain over hours and leave and AWOLs and leave without pays, the agency has a duty to bargain. If they don't bargain, you have a right to ask for a status quo ante, which means they reverse all them AWOLs they gave all those employees, give them all of that money back, and then you negotiate over what's considered AWOL, how you're going to issue AWOLs, and how you're going to issue leave without pays. Why? Because they are conditions of employment. Don't allow the agency to tell you that AWOL is at the discretion of the agency. It is not. It is a mandatory subject of bargaining, just like telework is a mandatory subject of bargaining. Okay? So, it's been about an hour now. We talked about Article 47, Article 49, the duty to bargain. If there's anything that we can do to help you, reach out. I'll be more than happy to help you and more than happy to work with you. Once again, my name is Kevin Ellis, local president of 2338 in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And some of you, I will send this MOU out with you so you can read and see the language that was contained within it. In case you want to do something like that on your own, on your end, I'll be happy to help you. Once again, I can be contacted through my government email account at kevin.ellis@va.gov, or I can be contacted by my personal email address, K as in Kevin, C as in cat, E as in Edward, 40 at yahoo.com, or you can text me at 573-429-9030. And I say text me first to tell me who you are, because as you know, these spam callers are now using personal local numbers to call you and say, hey, did you know in Missouri that a break-in happens every fifth? Stop. It's a spam call, okay? It's a robocall. So text me, tell me who you are, what you need, call me. We can talk about it. I'll do anything I can to help you because we're all part of one big happy family. God bless you, and I'll talk with you later.